Welcome everyone to my new YouTube channel, Small Fly Fisherman. Thanks for clicking on this video, because today I'm going to be tying for you a flatwing bait fish like one I have on my vise right here. This is my favorite fly to use in the surf, specifically for targeting sea trout. This is actually going to be a series about tying flies for fishing in the surf and just fishing in the surf overall. So I'm going to get right into it. Start off with a 2-aught hook. That's what I personally like to use for these flatwings. I'm using a Bob Clouser signature 2-aught hook. So put it in your vise and then get some relatively heavy thread. So I'm using about a 200 denier, I believe. So start it closer to the bend of the hook. So the back of the hook, I would say. So just about to the bend. Or then you're going to want to clip out some bucktail fibers from the bottom of the bucktail. So from about here or here, because these fibers are more hollow, and that's what you want to use for these flat wings on this back part of them. So snip out about that long. Then you're going to want to tie it in, leaving about this much coming out the back. So first look at how much before you begin to flare it. So loosely wrap it and then begin to tighten down on your bobbin so it's going to flare. Then I like to hold back the fibers to make it look a little more neat. So it looks about like that in the end. But you want to make it look a little more neat than that. Then you can start covering up the butt ends of the bucktail, but then just cut any excess and cover up the rest. Okay, so then once that's done, you got this tail tied in. Then you're going to want to get a feather to use as the tail. I'm using these Joe Corderios flatwing feathers that I got at the Atlanta Fly Show a couple weeks ago. So you're going to want to find, depending on how big you want your fly, I like to get one from about the middle of the cape. One not too thick and one not too thin. So this one probably one about that big. So you'll see on the feather that you have these these fibers on the feather, then you have these webbier feathers. You're going to want to strip off the webbier feathers and keep a little bit of it. So about like that, just the fluffy webby feathers. You want to dub it onto your thread, and then right where you tied in this bucktail, you want to tie it, you want to just make what you would call a little pillow behind it. This is to prop up the feather. So strip out all those webby feathers. And you want to find out which way the feather's laying. So you want to have it flat on the top of your hook. So like that. Then tie that down. So it's just right on top of that pillow, keeping it up. After that, you want to get something like Flashabou or Crystal Flash, or, which I don't have right now, some kind of body braid to make the body of the fly. So you're going to want to just cover up all these fibers from the bucktail and the feather. And I'm going to use Crystal Flash. So probably clip, I'd say, somewhere in the, or pull out about 10 feathers. I mean, not feathers, Crystal Flash strands. And fold it over. So it looks like that. And you're going to want to tie it down right in front of that pillow where the feather is. And then what I like to do is take the end of it, of your Crystal Flash, and take it with some hackle pliers to keep it together and wind it up just so it stays together a little better. And bring your thread almost to the eye of the hook and begin wrapping your Crystal Flash around the hook until you get almost to the eye of the hook. Make sure to leave plenty of space after you wrap this to tie in the rest of your materials. So once you get closer to the end, maybe get it with your hands. Leave probably 2 hook eyes of length between where you tie off your thread on the Crystal Flash. And make sure that's secure so it doesn't unwind. And then cut any stray Crystal Flash fibers. And then cover up all of it that you tied down so it looks good. Then you're going to want to take your white bucktail again, but this time you're going to want to take fibers from about here all the way to the top. And you want them to be relatively long. So take, I'd say about this much. And then cut it from the hide. And once again, strip out any of the short fibers. And then if your vise has a rotary function, flip it over. Oh, and I forgot to say, but you're going to want to cut it at about a 30-degree angle. So about like that. And then you're going to want to tie down your fibers. And then you want to slightly put more and more pressure on it to flare the fibers. And then once they're flared, evenly distribute them with your thumbnail or your thumb. And then I like to pull it under the vise so you can see how it really looks. Make sure it's evenly distributed on each side of the hook. And then cover up all those fibers once again. Then cut the rest, cut the butts of the bucktail. And cover all of it up. Next, you're going to want to get whatever color you want on the top of the bucktail. So if you're using a chartreuse feather like this, you could use olive or chartreuse, but I'm just going to use chartreuse. So once again, you're going to want to get, this isn't a very long bucktail, so I'm going to try and find the longer fibers on it. And get a similar size clump to the one that you did for the bottom of your fly. Snip it off the hide and once again cut that angle into it. So that should be enough. And then place that on top of and then flip your vise around and place it on top. And don't put a bunch of tension on it right away. Evenly distribute it and then pull down on it to make it flare. Then after you flared it, make sure it's evenly distributed and cover up those butts of the bucktail. Next, after you have all of that done, you're going to want to get some peacock herl. So find probably the longest possible peacock herl fibers. If you just have a standard bundle of them, you're going to want to get probably 4 to 6. Make sure they're long enough. And then cut the fragile butt sections off. And then tie it in right over the chartreuse bucktail. After this is done, then you're going to want to get crystal flash that you use for the body, or you could even use Flashabou, which I tend to like to use because it's bigger and adds another color to the fly, making it a little more flashy. So, and then get roughly 4 to 6, maybe, again, strands. That was too many. So probably 4, I'd say. And then if you get 4, you can fold it over on itself. And then once you fold it over on itself, that's when you should tie it in. And then after this step's done, you're going to want to get the eyes for your flatwing. So, because I don't have real jungle cock eyes, I'm going to be using artificial ones. Pull off 2. And make sure that you put one on this with the same amount of eye showing as you put the other one on the other side. You're going to want to make sure to cover up and tie this down very well, because I've had these eyes come out before. And cut the excess. And then get your other eye and tie it in just like you did that one. And then after you're done with that, you're going to want to cut it again and make sure that your fly is looking good and that you have all of it, all the fat, the bucktail, placed how you want it. Just kind of fluffing it up almost, which I like to do. And then you're basically done with the fly. And you're going to want to whip finish your fly. I'm just going to use my fingers because I'm going to be putting head cement on it or some kind of UV resin. Put about 6 whip finishes into it. Making sure it's cinched down. Then I'm going to use some Luna Thin resin, UV resin. Making sure not to put too much on it. I need to put a little more on there. Once you put that on there, you're going to want to hit it with your UV light for a couple seconds, maybe 10 to 30 seconds, I'd say. And once that cures, there's your flat wing. It's a great pattern that I love for the surf, and I know I love using it in the surf in South Carolina. I know it was probably originally intended for stripers up in the Northeast, but this is a great fly. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to try to upload videos weekly for this series of surf fly fishing. Thank you for watching.